Hey guys, project-zodiac here. I'm back with another video and I'm so excited for this video. This is a video I've been working on for a very long time now and I'm just so glad that it's finally out. This is, as you can see, another Xenoblade related video, and it is my third part in the whole topic of the Xenoblade X connect to the mainline Xenoblade games. If you guys don't know, I've already made 2 videos on this particular topic in a particular order that you should watch them. The order is in the description for my Xenoblade playlist. If you go on the playlist, you'll see everything in the order you should watch it. So this is the third part of the Xenoblade X connecting to the mainline Xenoblade games. And it's something I've been working on for a very long time. As I mentioned, I actually wrote the script for this on November 5th, 2023. However, I only had a chance to do the main recording of this video on November 6th, 2024. And this particular intro I'm recording right now on February 26th, 2025. So yeah, it's been a long time in getting this video done. I had to do a lot of research and I also couldn't work on it for a very long time, also because of work and school as well. So I'm so sorry it took so long to get this video out, but right now it's perfect timing because Nintendo did announce Xenoblade X Definitive Edition, which I'm so excited for, and that comes out in about a month on March 20th, and I'm just so excited for. I will be talking about Xenoblade X Definitive Edition towards the end of the video, as again, that concept of Xenoblade X Definitive Edition, the information we have on it, it wasn't released when I originally wrote the script, but so I do have like a off-script little section towards the end of the video explaining this. In this video, I'm talking about the fact that Xenoblade X is confirmed to be canon to the Xenoblade series as a whole, thanks to Xenoblade Future Redeemed. A lot of people still think that it does not make Xenoblade X canon, but in this video I'm doing what I can to address the fact that it does prove that it is canon. So in this video I will be talking about a lot of points that a lot of people use to kind of say it doesn't make sense that it's canon, or that they will say this is just a reference, or maybe it's a alternate telling of it, or maybe it's retcon. All of those factors I talk about here. There's a lot to discuss here. And on top of that, there's going to be a lot of factors regarding spoilers. So keep in mind that this video is going to have spoilers for all of Xenoblade X, all of Xenoblade, the regular Xenoblade games, 1, 2, 3, and the DLCs for those. And then also all of Xenosaga, because as we know now, Xenosaga is also canon. So yeah, there's going to be a lot to discuss here. There's a lot to go over. And I'll be using actual context from the games, actual information from all the games and information from all the games to explain how all of the things that is presented in Xenoblade Future Redeemed does prove that X is canon, not necessarily that it's not. So proving that it's canon. Anyway, so there's a lot to talk about here using actual evidence from the games. Also keep in mind that I'm going to be using evidence for one thing in particular that I haven't really seen people talking about in regards to one of the biggest factors that people say that it does not prove that Xenoblade X is canon. I'll be using something that I noticed and that's going to be done at the very end of the video. So at the very end of the video, I'll be giving this particular thing that everybody basically overlooked, including myself, that does prove that Xenoblade X is canon. So okay, again, let's go straight into the video. So as I've said, in the past I've written 2 essays that show how Xenoblade X connects to the mainline Xenoblade games, and a lot of people did agree with me and a lot did not. And this was all before Xenoblade Future Redeemed even released. So for me, the base game Xenoblade 3 had many proofs about the connection, but we still needed something that was stated and not just a visual representation. And I had hoped that Xenoblade Future Redeemed would have provided that, and thankfully it did. Xenoblade Future Redeemed has officially confirmed that Xenoblade X is connected to the series as a whole, as I have thought about since Xenoblade X originally released. And what is it exactly though that Xenoblade Future Redeemed states that does confirm this connection? Well, it called out Project Exodus, it called out the Earth-Life Colonization Project, and it also called out the Coalition Government. And also the fact that Project Exodus in Xenoblade X happens in July 2054 is a very interesting thing, because that is also what is stated in Xenoblade Future Redeemed, as that is the month in Xenoblade Future Redeemed where the 9th ship in this project is being launched into space. So this is all further enhanced by the visual references that show the connection with the games, which I talked about in the other essays, which again, please watch all of those videos in the order of the playlist so you can get the best context of everything that I'm talking about. But here in Xenoblade Future Redeemed, it is just straight out plot statements that is being shown and that is being verbally stated to further prove the connection. However, even though we are having these verbal statements to prove the connection, there are a few things that don't just line up yet. The first of which is related to Xenosaga. For those of you that are unaware, Xenoblade is the third version or the third reimagining or retelling of the original Xenogears Perfect Works story that Takahashi, the creator of this series, basically has been trying to tell across Xenogears, Xenosaga, and Xenoblade, but the first two attempts always kept getting cancelled. He has finally been able to tell that original story and story arc with the retelling in Xenoblade. And now we can finally start the next arc, which is now set after Future Redeemed. Originally, in other videos, I had talked about how Xenoblade basically does exactly what Xenosaga does in various ways, so it is its own retelling as well, because originally Xenosaga was kind of like a prequel and a sequel to Xenogears, but it would eventually just retell Xenogears and not have Xenogears be canon. Whereas Xenoblade was not doing that format originally from what we understand, and it was just a full retelling. But what is interesting is, as I mentioned, one of the biggest issues that lines up with Xenoblade X being canon to Xenoblade is because that first big issue is related to Xenosaga, because now, not only did Future Redeemed confirm that Xenoblade X is canon, but it also confirms that Xenosaga is canon to the universe and story of Xenoblade, as in like the actual story for Xenosaga. So that means that Xenoblade is not just a retelling of Xenosaga anymore. Xenoblade is part of Xenosaga now, which is very interesting because it's also very similar to how they were originally doing Xenosaga, with having Xenogears somewhat be a part of Xenosaga until they eventually readapted Xenogears portion of the story to Xenosaga. But right now, Xenosaga is literally just part of the story for Xenoblade, and it is insane. So how is it exactly that Xenosaga being a canon section of the story problematic in connecting Xenoblade X to the mainline series for Xenoblade? Well, Xenosaga states that there are no aliens in the universe, and in Xenoblade X, there is very clearly aliens in the universe. So the big issue there is, it's not that Xenosaga is canon, it's that Xenosaga states that there is no aliens in the universe, but in Xenoblade X we know that there are aliens. So that means that Xenoblade X can be contradictory to all of this, correct? We'll get back to that. So another issue that we can talk about in regards to Xenoblade X being connected to the mainline Xenoblade games is, how did humans not know about the aliens coming to invade before Klaus did the experiment if Xenosaga is canon? Since Xenosaga is canon, humans would have known about the invading aliens, right? So why did they say that there are no aliens in Xenosaga, not even thousands of years after Earth disappeared? Because Xenosaga is taking place thousands of years after Earth disappears. Now, another issue that we can also talk about is that radio scene in Future Redeemed, as it says the time of day that the broadcast is happening is on May 16th, and that it is also a Wednesday. The issue is, if there is a new ship in Future Redeemed set to be launching in July, which is just a few months after the radio broadcast, and we also know that in Xenoblade X, the invasion and the emergency launch happened in July of 2054, how can the two events be the same event and in the same canon and universe if the May 16th of 2054 is actually not a Wednesday? So that is a huge contradiction as well, right? Because if the radio broadcast is happening on a Wednesday in Future Redeemed, it can't be in 2054 because there is no May 16th in 2054. So it can't be the same time frame, right? So we'll get back to that as well. Another issue is, if it's all connected to Xenoblade X, how does that explain people not focusing and killing the aliens? Why were they focused on getting the conduit? And then another issue is, why did the aliens attack in the first place other than Luxar's group doing what he wanted, which again is trying to kill the humans? And how come there are no mentions of the Sumerians in Xenosaga? And then in Xenoblade X, why do the ghosts appear and why do they resemble things from Origin in Xenoblade 3? And then we have the last big contradiction, which is Dmitry Yurirev from Xenosaga being named in Xenoblade Future Redeemed, as well as Vector Industries, a company from Xenosaga, being a thing in Xenoblade. So these two are less about Xenoblade X being canon and more about how Xenosaga ties into all of this due to the dates that are given because of Xenoblade X, such as the White Whale leaving in July 2054 and what we know about Dmitry in Xenosaga and the timeframes not matching up with 2054, given that Xenosaga Episode 1 takes place over 4,000 years in the future after Earth disappears. So they do not use the same date time frame that we would have, which they would have been using at the time of the radio scene from Future Redeemed, because they are still on Earth at that time. So for them, that radio scene is set during the same calendar years that we have in real life. So how is it that all of these things about Dmitry and Vector Industries, how is it all connecting to Xenoblade X as well if Vector Industries is also never mentioned or shown in Xenoblade X, which if Xenoblade X is canon, they would have left Earth during 2054, during this scene, having Vector Industries be a factor into all of this. So there's a lot of issues here that really makes you think, how can this even really connect with Xenoblade X? Because it seems like so many contradictions. Well, all of these issues are actually things we can answer by looking at things that contradict what was established and things that are just never really answered, but that we can imply based off of the information that we do have across 8 main games and 5 short games. And these numbers that I just mentioned, 8 main games, 5 short games, they are due to me adding Xenosaga games and Xenoblade X with the mainline Xenoblade games in general. So how can we fully say that these are all the same events, people, and how they all tie in together and fully prove that Xenoblade X is canon in the main universe, instead of similar things happening in it, but all of it happening in an alternate universe for Xenoblade X? Well, let's take a look. First, let's go to the part about the aliens. There are a few things we can say based off of what we've seen in the story to answer this. First, we know that the government kept things hidden. We know this due to the things that Lau and Alma tell us in Xenoblade X. The governments did not tell the general public about the MIMS and how the lifehold actually works. Given this information, we can also assume and say that the governments probably did not tell Earth about the aliens coming, and even during the attacks. That's not because they didn't know there were aliens. They did know it was aliens that were coming due to Alma telling them. but they chose to not let the public know. Okay, so that's easy enough to explain why in Xenosaga people did not know about the aliens coming to attack Earth, and during the attacks they were probably just told by the government that it was other groups of rebels fighting over the conduit. Well, in Xenosaga it's called the Zohar, but for Xenoblade purposes we're going to be calling it the conduit. So the government could have just lied about who was actually fighting above space. But then how does that actually explain the people on the White Whale knowing about the aliens? What about when the invasion came to Earth rather than before? How do people not realize that when the invasion is happening on Earth that those were aliens? How did they not realize that those were aliens? Well, let's go over the people of Earth first. Keep in mind that in Xenosaga people were fighting over the conduit as they were in Xenoblade. Since there were other humans fighting for the conduit in Xenosaga and Xenoblade, again, the government probably took that fact and just named the aliens as regular rebels or called them the Gnosis or interdimensional beings or something, just never using the word aliens. So basically the government could have just said that they were humans that were the invading force, and really that this invading force was just another group of people with higher tech that others didn't have and are just power hungry for the conduit, just like the rest of the other rebels that they were fighting. And then we can also assume that since the war was getting worse very quickly, they had to launch the ships urgently in July, more than the one that was planned to be launched as heard in Future Redeemed. So basically this just makes it so that people would not know about the aliens, the ones that left, because they had to be launched out of Earth very quickly. But then you must be wondering, in Xenosaga, how can people not actually see the aliens walking around Earth and fighting if the aliens were invading Earth in Xenoblade X? Well, that's the thing. The aliens, other than Alma, never actually landed on Earth in Xenoblade X. It is stated in Xenoblade X that the fight with the aliens happened in July, not before. Before, it was just the humans fighting each other and getting into arguments with each other, before they really started a huge fight with each other due to things not working out with the Serverite spell that we hear about in the radio for Future Redeemed. So when the aliens eventually come, they are joined in the fight with the humans and themselves. So basically, there's many things that's going on in July. First, the people in the government have been fighting the Soviet rebels, which is most likely the retcon name for Xenosaga Salvatore rebels, and they try to stop them and the other groups from getting the conduit. Then we have another battle happening at the same time over Earth, which is what Alma warned the governments about. It is two alien factions fighting each other. They are the Ghosts and they are the Samar Federation. Then a subsection of the Samar Federation, a small group called the Ganglion, focused on destroying Earth. So then we also have the last thing that was happening, which is the governments trying to kill the aliens with the technology that Alma gave them, but it wasn't enough. So to answer one of the questions listed before that many people ask due to thinking it all contradicts each other, this is not a contradiction. The humans did try to focus their attacks on the aliens in Xenoblade X as well as other humans. But now back to the aliens and human contradiction. The battle was just around Earth and in the atmosphere and in the air above cities. And while in Xenoblade X it is stated that ships did crash on Earth, those ships blew up upon crash and damaged the Earth badly. So what I said is still actually true based off of the context and information we have in Xenoblade X. So there were no aliens other than Alma actually walking on the surface of the Earth during this war from what we are told by Alma and the others in Xenoblade X. It was all just a fight in their ships and robots, both in space, on Earth's atmosphere, and in the airs above cities. Also, remember that Alma had to hide her true self. Why would she have to hide her true form if she was walking around on Earth since 2026? It's because the humans on Earth, other than the people in the government, really did not know that there were aliens and they were being lied to about aliens. And we can also assume that Alma's real appearance ended up being the inspiration for Cosmos' design by people that did see Alma and her real body, as they had already probably started working on Cosmos's blueprints at the time after they were sent to space, but before the aliens arrived, as we do know that 8 ships had already left before July thanks to Future Redeemed. But okay, what about the people on the white whale? How did they come to know it was aliens? Well, at some point, the high officials on the white whale had told them that there was aliens. They probably made up a lie to cover up that they knew all along. The point is, they eventually did tell them, and as far as we know, they're the only one of the ships that was launched that knew about the aliens. But if all of this is too much of a stretch for some of you to accept as being an actual good answer to explain these things that people think are contradictions when I don't think that they are, then look at it this way as another option. Xenoblade Future Redeemed does say that there have been a few ships that had already left Earth before May 16th. Then you can assume that those people that had already left early probably never knew about the alien invasion, as they were no longer on Earth by the time it came. If anyone on board did know, they were probably just under orders to not say anything, and were told so by the higher ups. Again, this isn't me stretching or trying to look for specific answers that could forcefully connect them, because it's not. It's literally things that are stated in Xenoblade X. The government had lied to the general public about so many things. So really, it is not so much of a stretch to assume that these possibilities can actually have been one of the factors to explain why people did not know about aliens. So that explains it pretty easily for humans not knowing about aliens while on Earth. But what about those who we see in Xenosaga who have been living in space and in other planets for so long after Earth disappeared? Like, how have they never run into aliens? Again, Xenosaga is set 4,000 years after Earth disappears. Well, one theory for that is that Klaus's experiment really did affect the entire universe and sent people of a different composition than humans to another dimension, as he did with Earth splitting, rather than it just affecting those closest to the planet. Another theory is that aliens are supposed to be keeping their distance from humans and Earth, as we are kind of told and implied upon with Xenoblade X. And, you know, they probably did so even after Earth disappeared, like they had been for thousands of years before. Another theory is that people just went in a different direction than where the aliens are, with coordinates given to them by Alma as to where not to go. Or one can assume that since Vector Industries is a factor now, that Xenosaga is canon and is run by Wilhelm, he makes it so that humans just never get close to aliens, considering how much he orchestrates things in Xenosaga. Or for all we know, maybe in Xenosaga they did find aliens, but maybe they say that their DNA is all the same, and so is their composition, so they just don't call them aliens anymore. There are many ways to get around this particular issue using the information we get from both series, both Xenoblade including X and Xenosaga. So really, it's not too contradicting when we add in these perspectives. Again, these are all things that are literally stated in the games that can easily be used to explain these little things. It's just these games are dense, so it's easy to overlook these little details and these facts, but they are there and it can easily be explained. So what about why the aliens attack in the first place, other than the Galleon's reasons of Luxor wanting humans dead so he does not fear them destroying his race due to their Sumerian DNA? It's due to a battle with the Ghosts and the Samar Federation, as mentioned before. It was a battle that was already heading its way towards Earth, as they had been fighting way before, not really that they picked Earth to go fight in. But what does that have to do with Xenosaga? Not much, other than the fact that, again, people that had left before the invasion or even during the invasion just did not know that there were aliens. Very few people were told about the Sumerians to begin with, even in Xenoblade X's main story. Now, what about the contradiction of the Ghost having technology that looks like Origin from Xenoblade 3? If the two are in the same canon and in the same timeline of events, why is Origin and other things in Xenoblade 3 very similar to the Ghost in Xenoblade X? Well, in my first Xenoblade X and Xenoblade 3 connection essay, again, please watch these videos in order, I do have a theory that they were only able to make Origin in the first place due to Pyra and Mithra having Klaus's information passed on to them, as we are told at the end of Xenoblade 2, which he would have known that information about Alma and passing along the information about the Lifehold unit, since he was one of the head scientists working on the conduit, which the Lifehold in Xenoblade X is literally based off on the conduit in terms of its looks. This is why in Xenoblade 3 they were able to make Origin with the information passed to them via Klaus. But okay, what about its look? Well, Alma gave humans many different alien race technologies from what we are told in Xenoblade X. Given this information, the Lifehold technology could have come from the Ghost. She would have been able to show them the schematics that she probably got from the Ghost, which Klaus could have learned about later on after its development. Okay, so why does Origin look like Ghost technology instead of the Lifehold that humans had made if Origin and the Lifehold share the same main idea and concept? Well, that's because Klaus was not really involved with the manufacturing of things. He was just the researcher and the scientist. He was probably just shown the original Ghost designs and information on how it works, and maybe helped figure out how they can make it work with the technology that they had, while the humans ended up then changing the look and making it resemble more the conduit, since Klaus's team was already working on the conduit and it was something that was very important to them. The departments working on the conduit and the Lifehold probably did work together very closely given the time frame that they had from what Alma had said. Again, all of this is kind of backed up due to us knowing that Klaus was high up in the scientist groups and did work with the government. He also did pass in all of his knowledge to Numa, which is Pyra Mithra, at the end of Xenoblade 2. So this does make sense that they would just have the main original design for the Lifehold, which would have been Ghost technology, in their memories and mind that Klaus passed to them, which then Pyra Mithra explained and shared with the two worlds to design Origin. So with all that out of the way, we now get to the two biggest things that could really be a contradiction, as so far everything before now really hasn't been, when you really take a moment to analyze the games. So let's go with seeing if Dimitri and Vector can contradict Xenoblade X from being in the same canon. The war happens in 2054 in Xenoblade X, which is when we can assume that that is the year that we hear the radio broadcast happening. But we will get to that later on, so let's just quickly focus on Dimitri so we can come back to this later on. How can Dimitri be alive in 2054 if he is alive and young and looking like he's maybe in his 30s in Xenosaga, which episode 1 again takes place in 4767 TC, which, as I have mentioned earlier, is a new calendar year system, such as how we have BC for the years before Jesus and AD for the years after Jesus. It's the same idea with TC, but it's after AD. So they switched to the system in the year 2510 AD, which again is our actual real-life calendar system. So if in the year 2510 AD, that calendar system was switched from AD to TC, and if Dimitri is alive in Xenosaga 1, which is many thousands of years after 2054 AD, as the radio in Future Redeemed and the experiment happens in, how is this possible? Well, it's very simple. Dimitri is a designer child, and designer child, they're basically people that are modified early on in their lives and given enhancements to basically be like a superhuman in a way. They can live for a very long time, and some have very specific abilities. In Xenosaga, Dimitri even said himself that he is hundreds of years old, and we can see him move his consciousness to other people and take over their bodies and live that way too. He is alive in 2054 due to him being a designer child, and was also a part of the Salvatore rebels, which again was most likely changed to be the Savorite rebels in Xenoblade. So they're basically the same thing, just a different name, because before, again, copyright issues, but now we can understand that they're the same thing. So yeah, he was part of the Savorite rebels to go against people getting control of the conduit. That's what they were trying to do. The Savorite rebels were trying to get people to go against getting control of the conduit. So that explains how he's been alive for so long. So he really isn't just a different Dmitry Yurev in Xenoblade Future Redeemed than the one from Xenosaga, just named after him. No, he's literally the same person, because we know that he can live for hundreds of years and even transfer his consciousness and live through other people as well. So what about Vector Industries being a factor here? Well, Wilhelm is the creator of Vector Industries, and he is also almost as old as the creation of the universe as far as we know. But he also made Vector Industries while Earth was still present. And his company is also what funded people to go looking for the conduit to begin with in 2001 AD. But even if they've done these really big things and have been around for so long, Vector Industries, we have to remember, is not the only big company in the world. They're just probably not really featured or mentioned in Xenoblade X due to other companies being involved as well in making New LA. But just because other companies were involved in making New LA for Xenoblade X's White Whale, that doesn't mean that Vector Industries was not involved in making the White Whale or other ships that was sent into space. In fact, it's the opposite. Vector Industries was actually involved in making ships. In fact, they made the Pleroma, which was a ship that people used in order to leave Earth in Xenosaga. So basically, the fact that Dmitry and Vectors are factors in Xenoblade does not contradict Xenoblade X and its timeframe or canon placement at all. Now, that just leads us to the last thing, the biggest thing that can contradict Xenoblade X being canon to Xenoblade 3 at all, or it might even imply that only similar events happened in X that happened in the mainline Xenoblade story, and that particular main issue is the dates that are given. And this is one that I'm so excited to talk about, because every video that I had seen in the past year about this particular connection, plot, and everything like that, they always just say, oh, it's probably just retconned, or it just probably, you know, it proves that it's not connected, or, you know, things like that. But I have not seen a single video that talks about what I'm about to explain right now, so I'm super excited for this. So we are told in Future Redeemed during that radio broadcast that it happened on Wednesday, May 16th. They talk about ships launching and the new one set to launch in July of that year. However, we are told in Xenoblade X that the events happened with the ships leaving Earth was in July of the year 2054 AD. This is contradicting from what we see of Future Redeemed, as I mentioned earlier, because there is no May 16th in 2054. The closest date without passing 2054 that we have a Wednesday, May 16th is 2046. So that must mean that Xenoblade X is not canon and only similar events happen in the mainline games, right? Well, no. And this is where I'm really excited in regards to with this video. This does not contradict Xenoblade X being canon for the following reason. Look at the radio scene again. It says that on the night of May 16th, the 8th ship was launched as part of Project Exodus. It is then specifically called as an interstellar colony ship. That is the official ship classification for the first 8 ships that was launched so far. However, we are then told that Ship 9 will be launching in July, and this is what everyone, even myself, got tripped over. Ship 9 launches in the same month as the White Whale, and the other ships launched in urgency in 2054 on the same day of the White Whale as well. This is where most people assume that the war happens 2 months after the radio broadcast in Xenoblade X. And this is also where people say there is a huge contradiction due to there not really being a Wednesday, May 16th in 2054. Here's the thing though, this is not the same event that happens in Xenoblade X. In my opinion, this radio broadcast really is from 2046, a full 8 years before the aliens invade and Klaus's experiment is done. And how do I know that? Well, first, the dates as we talked about before. 2046 is the closest year to 2054 that has a Wednesday, May 16th. And the biggest thing we all overlooked is that the ships 1 through 8 were specifically called interstellar colony ships. Ship 9, as the radio says, is a new era in space travel ship design. That is literally what it says. Again, watch the scene again. Starting with Ship 9, they do state that the ship classification is specifically stated to now being called a Philadelphia-class motherships. But okay, so what does this all have to do with Xenoblade X? Well, the ships that are used to leave Earth in Xenoblade X on July 2054 are not called either of these two classifications. Instead, they are given a different name. They are called ARC ships. So what is the difference? Aren't they all just colony ships? Well, yes and no. The first classification of ships, those first 8 that was launched, they are stated to have brought 3 million people to space. So basically, if it is sending about 3 million people into space with those first 8 ships together, that basically means that we are getting about 480,000 people in each of these ships, more or less, because again, the radio does tell us about 3 million people across 8 ships. So this 3 million group across 8 ships, this was for a smaller test group, basically. The classification starting with Ship 9 is stated in the game to hold 1.5 million people in one ship. And then we have the White Whale, which again is an ARC ship classification. The White Whale and ARC ship classifications are stated to hold up to 20 million people in one ship. Also, the ARC ships have full big cities inside of them for space living rather than just being a ship to bring people to colonize other planets, as the other two classifications seems to be based off what is said in each of these games. The fact that we now have information that many ships have been built over time basically holds more proof that the radio scene is not set in 2054, and that July is not the July that everything happens in Xenoblade X. In other words, basically in those 8 years, they start building the ARC ships. And in July 2054, the ARC ships are all built and is what is released, not the other two classifications that we hear about in Future Redeemed. So now there's another piece of information that we have to talk about in regards to the ships, which is very important. And it's something that a lot of people might pause and say, wait, this doesn't make sense. So it doesn't prove that it's canon or connected, but no, that is not true. So this particular thing that I'm talking about is the ship capacity. I know I just mentioned them, but let's go over the ARC ships. As I had mentioned, the ARC ships can hold up to 20 million people. It's the ones that has the most capacity of all 3 ship classifications. However, that is not true. The ARC ships can only hold up to 50,000 people, and even so it could barely hold up to 50,000 people. Because of that, that means that the ARC ships, which is the last ships that were made, holds the least amount out of all 3 ship classifications. So how is it that everybody in the government working on Project Exodus would end up making a ship that holds even less people compared to the other 2 classifications? Well, again, the ARC ships was their last resort, and what they were told does not contradict anything, because people were led to believe that the ARC ships did hold 20 million people. If you watch the cutscenes, you'll see that the party is thinking that there's 20 million people inside of the lifehold, but then Alma reveals to them that that's not true. That the truth is, it's the essence of 20 million people on the ARC ship, and that the ship could barely hold 50,000. So everybody is led to believe by the government that 20 million people are physically in these ARC ships, going out to escape Earth. So it does not contradict anything, because again, the government had lied. So we can assume that for the first 2 ship classifications, they probably did have that capacity that they had, but then for the last one, they lied about the capacity, and the amount of people that are there physically is way under 20 million per ship. So that is something that is important to know, because as we've discussed throughout this video, the government in Xenoblade X has shown that they had lied about basically everything. So it does not actually contradict the fact that the ARC ships holds way less than any of the other ship classifications, because the government most likely had been lying about it. But what about also the fact that the radio scene does say that all of Project Exodus will set to bring 10 million people to the stars by the end of the project? Considering that the Future Redeemed scene is about 8 years before the Xenoblade X scene, they probably already did reach that total and then made a new total amount and a new goal after that when they started to develop the ARC ships. Having the radio scene taking place in 2044 also gives time for the save rights bill to fall and cause bigger tension between them and the people controlling the conduit, as opposed to just a few months, which, with this bill falling, would end up leading to more conflicts with humans and their battles amongst themselves before the aliens arrived 8 years later, which again, also keep in mind, many of these humans knew about this because Elma came in 2026. That could also be the reason why the Project Exodus name is the same one for both projects. The ships leaving Earth to colonize and then the ships leaving Earth to survive. But at the same time, maybe they just kept the name as because it is an Exodus and it wasn't really related to the colonization project. But it still would explain why the two projects are the same name. Maybe it is just the final version of Project Exodus was getting people out and they just kept the name, which also makes sense. However, if this is too much of a stretch for you, then you can just say that there was a change in the lore and it was retconned to be in July 2046 instead of July 2056. We will definitely find that part out during Xenoblade X Definitive Edition if this particular date had been retconned or not. But if in Xenoblade X Definitive Edition it is retconned to be in July 2046 instead of in July 2054, it's also not the first time there's been a retcon in the series in this way, so it wouldn't really be a big deal anyway. It would just make things a little bit easier to understand. But I do not really think that that makes much sense given how complicated the samurai argument with the government is, and again, like I said, 2 months is way too quick for that conflict to grow. And the amount we hear about it, really, in my opinion, it just doesn't make sense that all of that is just in 2 months. So I don't think that July 2054 will be retconned when Definitive Edition for Xenoblade X comes out, but if it does, then yeah, I guess the conflict happens in just 2 months. But anyway, for me, it just makes sense that the radio event is set in 2046 while Klaus's experiment and the invasion all happens in 2054. So for me, this all proves that Xenoblade X is not retconned or contradicted. It proves that it's not just similar events that's happening between Xenoblade X and the mainline games. For me, it proves that Xenoblade X is part of the canon 100% in its entirety, and the events that we see and hear in it happen as well in the mainline games. It is part of the story, and I've been saying it in all of these essays, and you know, I just thought about this ever since Xenoblade X originally came out. So now we have actual confirmation by spoken words in Future Redeemed that prove that Xenoblade X is connected, and it's not just visual references as we have seen in Xenoblade 3, the base game. And that just makes me so happy since we finally have this confirmation that I've been so excited for, and hoping that Xenoblade 3 or Future Redeemed would verbally confirm. Again, if you see my other videos, you will understand that I had been explaining how the connections really are very, very, very present. It's not just Easter eggs or anything like that. But it just makes me so happy that we have verbal confirmation, because it just further proves what I've been trying to explain for the past few years and ever since Xenoblade X came out. And before I forget, I'm not sure if I do mention this later on in this script. I'm almost done though with the script. But in case I don't, yes, there is a section about, well, we see the planet being blown up in Xenoblade X. I'm not forgetting that because I did talk about that particular section in the other videos. Again, please watch those videos so you can understand better what is actually happening with the planet blowing up in Xenoblade X versus the white light merger or universal split that we see with Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3. Again, that is explained. It's really not as complex as people think it is. It is very easy to understand. It is the same event. That's all I'm gonna say here. Please watch the other videos for more context. So okay, with all this in mind though, we know that everything that happens in the intro for Xenoblade X happens in the main games. So what are my thoughts on what happened after the White Whale left? Well, again, that is another thing that I also talk about in my other Xenoblade essays about where I think Xenoblade X main story takes place. Because the intro we know is happening during Klaus's experiment, but the main story is a little bit more different. But now that we have a bit more information with Future Redeemed, have my thoughts really changed on the topics that I've mentioned before and how I think the actual main story Xenoblade X takes place in? Not really. I do still think that Mira is either a metaphysical planet or it is Earth being reformed and the white whale crashes on it thousands of years after humans left it and they became the Sumerians after Earth reformed. I do go into a bit more details as to why it could be either of these two theories the most amongst a few other theories in my second Xenoblade X being connected to Xenoblade 3 video, so again please watch these videos in order. So the only new thing I have to add to my theories about the placement of Xenoblade X's main story is that the blue dot coming to Earth at the end of Xenoblade Future Redeemed is probably Cosmos. Or if it is that Earth did reform and in time the humans left and then the white whale crashed onto it due to time being differently than how we perceive it, which they do talk about in the games as well, then maybe it's them crashing on Mira. Like the blue dot is them crashing on Mira, the white whale crashing on Mira, which could be Earth. I do have another theory, a third theory that I didn't really mention before, and it is one that I don't think is as accurate as those two theories, but it is one that most people do think could be the actual answer. And that is that the blue dot is just Elma landing on the reformed Earth thousands of years later to tell humans about the alien invasion, and then from there we go into the main events of Xenoblade X. In other words, it could be that Xenoblade X is set after Xenoblade 3 and the Earth is reformed instead of during the beginning part of the Xenoblade series with Klaus doing his experiment. However, this theory of Xenoblade X being set after Xenoblade 3 happens, for me, it doesn't make much sense given everything that we just talked about, how the events of the intro Xenoblade X happens during Klaus's time. Again, please watch the other videos. It also wouldn't make sense that they would have real world stuff and countries that Klaus did after Klaus's time. So yeah, this one I don't really think is the case at all, but it's a fun one to talk about. But again, really think this through here. If we know for a fact that Earth during Klaus's time had all the same countries and governments that we do in the real world, and we know that the culture is totally different after the experiment, how is it that when Elma comes, if Xenoblade X is set after the Earth reforms, that the country or that the planet, all the countries and the culture is the exact same as it was before Klaus did the experiment? So that's what I mean. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. There is one particular way I can see how it can make sense using actual things that they do talk about in the series, but that would need to be explained a lot, such as, you know, with the collected unconsciousness, the Unus Mundus, those concepts that talks about, you know, like your ancestors' memories affecting you now, and you know, all those things. But that would take a long time for them to eventually get to the same civilization and lifestyle and culture, behaviors, and all of that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think really it is that, but it could be possible. I just think it's the other two theories that I talked about. But there's also another very interesting theory where the Earth that we see at the start of Xenoblade X might not actually be either Klaus's original world or the reformed Earth. In fact, it could just be that it's another planet that the colonists went and landed on and made it Earth. That could explain why it has the same countries, technology, culture, because it's just where people landed and made that as another Earth and called it Earth as well. And that could be where Elma goes, lands, and everything happens on that particular planet. The problem with this though is that the planet is called specifically Earth, and also it has the very same culture and countries and mindset that the regular Earth had. The issue with that is we know from Xenosaga that yes, there are multiple planets that do have humans and that, they brought the cultures over. In fact, the main planet is called Neo Jerusalem, which is basically Earth 2.0. And the original Earth that disappeared, Klaus's Earth, is called just Old Jerusalem at that point. But given the fact that we know that there are other planets that basically humans made as their Earth in Xenosaga could add to the fact more proof for this particular theory, but the issue is they specifically call this planet Earth in Xenoblade. So if they call this particular planet Earth in Xenoblade, why wouldn't they call the main planet Earth 2? Instead of Neo Jerusalem? So I don't think that that's actually the case, unless it could potentially be that maybe the start of Xenoblade X takes place way before Neo Jerusalem is formed, or in other words, they find Neo Jerusalem and they just end up calling it Earth as one of the colonists, and then eventually more thousands of years pass and then we get Neo Jerusalem. So that particular theory could be kind of in between, right when Earth 1, Klaus's Earth, gets sent away from the experiment, and then this situation happens on Earth 2, and then they eventually find Neo Jerusalem after this particular Earth gets destroyed. But then the issue with that is, well, this Earth is destroyed, so they must already have left it to begin with to find more colonies. So that particular theory also doesn't make sense too much because of the fact that they had already left Earth to colonize other planets. But it can work if told correctly. So that one, I'm not too opposed with this particular theory. It's just really gonna have to be really reworked a bit to have the intro of Xenoblade X be in between Klaus's Earth and Neo Jerusalem in terms of the timeline. That is just another theory. That one is actually one I heard from somebody else watching another video, and I think that was actually a pretty good theory overall. But again, some little issues that can kind of be fixed into it, it's not a problem. I still do think it makes more sense going with the two first theories that I talked about, but yeah, that's what I think about this particular little extra theory. Either way, it does not change the fact that the intro to Xenoblade X itself, the actual intro, can happen and probably does happen during Klaus's time, and I do believe that Xenoblade X was made to add in these big answers to big things that the mainline games just really don't touch on, which I talked about in this essay and in other essays in regards to how Xenoblade X connects. But I also do think that this game was also made to set up the next story arc for the Xeno series. And this goes into what I was talking a little bit about before earlier in the video, how the next arc will be the first arc after 25 years of Takahashi trying to get this one story told. It will be a brand new arc. So I can say this comfortably due to the fact that we do know that Takahashi had basically been planning the rest of the mainline Xenoblade series up till 3. When he was still finishing Xenoblade 1s. From what we read in interviews, and given the way that Xenoblade X ends in a huge cliffhanger too, also does seem to confirm that we will be going back to that particular story point at some point, which now we know we are with Xenoblade X Definitive Edition. And also now that he has finally finished telling the Perfect Work story, again a story that he's been trying to tell for the past 25 years, I do think that now it will be going into something totally new with the series, and we can start looking for clues for that. And the ending of Xenoblade 3 Xenoblade 3 Future Redeemed, and Xenoblade X. And that is the most important one, as I do believe that Xenoblade X is the seeds of the next Xeno series arc. And now we still got one more paragraph in the script, but I do want to quickly talk about Xenoblade X Definitive Edition. We do know that there's going to be new plot elements, and it does look like they are going to be addressing at least one of the big cliffhangers. And that is the cliffhanger of Lao being alive on a random beach with a guy walking up towards him saying, "Fancy seeing you here." Because that is how the original game ended, and I'm surprised that they put that in the trailer. We never hear the guy speaking to Lao, but we see him coming to where Lao is. And then we have a message in the original one that says, "This story never ends." So the fact that now we're finally getting this addressed really, for me, does seem like we are getting things set up already for the next arc. So while I doubt that Takahashi was actually saying in 10 years I'm gonna do it like this, I do still think, though, because of the fact that we do know that he had been working on the outlines for all of the mainline Xenoblade games up until Future Redeemed, when he was finishing Xenoblade 1, and that would include the plot outlines for Xenoblade X, I do think some plot details and some elements were reworked, obviously, but still implemented and set in a way where he would release it in specific games to later on start the next arc after that, because Takahashi's a genius. So it makes sense, and it also gives a reason for people to buy Xenoblade X Definitive Edition as well, and it also gives people a bigger look at to what the next arc is going to be. Because I don't think that cliffhanger is going to be fully explained in the end of Definitive Edition of Xenoblade X. I think it's going to be explained really well, and I think it's going to still leave a lot of things unanswered, because that will then start the next arc. So in other words, think of how Future Redeemed handle it. And they still explain so much stuff, and then they set things up for the next arc. That's how I think it's going to be, but instead of it being a prequel with a little bit of a sequel, I think it might be flipped. I think it'll be more of a sequel to X with a little bit of a prequel, understanding a little bit more about the ghosts and all of that stuff, and really setting the things up for the next story. So I'm super excited for Xenoblade X Definitive Edition. He can now start the next arc for Xenoblade, or the Xeno series as a whole, and fully start answering questions that were not answered before. And we know that for a fact, because he said so in the interviews, that, you know, we know for a fact that it was Malos's core crystal that was on N's Sword of the End. We know for a fact that there's a reason why Numa's core crystal is in Matthew's gauntlets. And we know a whole bunch of other things about where people are in Xenoblade 3 and how they connect later on in the series, because Takahashi himself has stated in the interview that was included for the Xenoblade 3 art book that these things are very important, and they are all going to be answered in the next series, in the next arc. So I am very excited for that. So again, the dude is a genius. He knows what he's doing with the story. He's been working on this his entire life. So I am sure that it's going to be amazing. I'm so excited for it. So yeah, all of these things that were probably left unanswered in Xenosaga and that were left unanswered in Xenoblade, we know for a fact that they are going to have resolutions, because he has confirmed it himself. And I think that Xenoblade X started setting up the seeds for that, and is now really, with the Definitive Edition, really gonna start bringing things into a more clear view. So with that said, let's just go to the last paragraph of the original script. So whatever comes next for the Xenoblade series, I am excited for it as well, and it will be something fully new and a original plot, one that is basically not bound to him trying to get this story fully told, like he was with the Xenogears, Xenosaga, and Xenoblade, in trying to tell the perfect work story. I just hope that while they are making this next story that we... oh well, wow, I'm just reading this right now. I just hope that while they're making that we do get a put of Xenoblade X soon, and that the Xeno... yeah, past me from a year ago, we got that right. So I'm so glad. Okay, and I do hope that we do get the Xenosaga games as well, ported over or remastered and brought over to the Switch or the Switch 2, which also I'm so glad that the Switch 2 is confirmed that it is going to be backwards compatible with Switch games. And I just realized I'm just so happy that all the Xenoblade games are now on the Nintendo Switch, all in one system. I'm just so happy that people can finally play Xenoblade X because it is so cool and so amazing. But I do hope that we get the Xenosaga games ported as well, since they are now canon to the story, so it'll be really confusing for fans who never played Xenosaga. So yeah, it'll be great for new fans as well as to see everything that Future Redeemed talked about if they play Xenosaga and Xenoblade X, and I'm so glad we are getting at least Xenoblade X. But yeah, I think that all of this is basically leading into the new world of Xenoblade 4. And maybe really Xenoblade 4 will be 3 things together. Maybe it will be Xenoblade X2. Well, I guess... yeah, because Definitive Edition is like 1.5. The story elements for that. So hopefully it'll be, you know, Xenoblade X2, Xenosaga 4, and Xenoblade 4. So these 3 story elements together, I think it will be amazing, just showing us the events that happened after the Earth re-merged and how so much time has passed. I'm just so excited to see that. Either way, I'm just glad that things got confirmed in Future Redeemed, and I'm excited to see what will come next for the Xeno series. So I'm sorry that this video was mega long. I am just so excited, and I'm just so glad that this video is finally out. As you can see, that is part of the reason why it also took me so long to actually record the audio. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what you think about this particular revelation that I'm presenting, about the ships, the dates of things, the connections of everything. Just let me know what you think. This was a video that I've been so excited to do, and it took a lot of research to get done. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please let me know what you think, and let me know your theories on Xenoblade X. With all of that said, guys, rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you later. Have a good day.